Hi, everyone, and welcome to another powerful conversation with yet another powerful woman. I'm delighted today to be joined by Sheena Taylor. We met at a local women's or ladies lunch club, and she was sat next to me, and I really enjoyed hearing all about her business. And she very kindly agreed to come and be subjected to my questioning in today's conversation. So thank you, Sheena. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Do you want to start by telling everybody who you are and what you do?
So I am an eco-friendly professional organizer. I help busy women create decluttered, easy to tidy homes so they have more time to spend however they want.
Wow, and I can imagine that that's something that most of us have a need for. I think, does everybody have a messy drawer somewhere in their house, or have everybody must have a need for some sort of decluttering somewhere in their life?
Yeah,
I
I think there's
guess.
always a little hidden pocket somewhere. But it's interesting because it's never really about the stuff. It's so much more than that. So although I tend to declutter one-to-one in homes, it's much more about decluttering life and making it a lot simpler for everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, how did you come to be on this journey, this path, offering this service?
It was a long journey. I was in teaching for almost 20 years, and the last sort of 6 of those, I was a Senko, and really specialized in supporting children with neurodiversities and learning difficulties, and also supporting them with mental well-being through coaching and mentoring. And when I left, I just knew that I wanted to be in a space that somehow was going to support mental well-being. I just wasn't sure
Mm,
how that was going to
yeah,
look. And I mean, I probably should have known. I had my own coaching and read lots of books. And through the process, organizing just kept popping up as the skill I had. And when I reflected, of course, I used it in my teaching all the time, but on a personal level, I've lived in 23 houses throughout my lifetime. So my mum particularly, I think, was quite nomadic. And so we moved a lot. And I think probably part of developing those organizing skills was actually moving so often and being able to control that space around me. So I felt a bit calmer in
yeah.
changing situations. Yeah. So yes, it led me here.
And so what's the your ideal client? Who are the people that you enjoy helping the most?
That has developed over time. I help lots of different people with moving, or if they've inherited, or if they have a family member that they're clearing house for. But more and more women that are particularly late diagnosed with ADHD are coming to me,
Mhm.
realizing actually that they do need support with this, and it's okay to reach out and get some. And they're my favorite. My favorite clients. I do really love helping them, and I think it's partly because I love to be able to work with them to really dig deep into what works with their brain and to sort of dispel some of the beliefs that things have to be done in a certain way. And actually, that as a society, I think we need to stop apologizing for the state of our homes when people come in unexpectedly and just say, "Welcome to my loving home," rather than saying, "Oh, excuse the mess. It's been," I just think we need to get rid of that stigma that houses have to be a certain way. And
Yeah.
I find, particularly with women with ADHD, that they've gone through an awful lot through their life being told that they're not doing things right or being criticized for doing things in a
Mm,
certain way, and that spills over into when they create homes when they're when in their later life. And yeah, I like to get a bit deeper with them on that and sort of just reach a point where they're okay with where they're at.
mm.
Yeah.
So, what in particular does a neurodiverse woman's home look like,
I
or an
think
ADHD home?
So I think,
ADHD probably
yeah,
more specific.
yeah, I think, and it's different for different people because I do know ADHD women who work really, really hard at being organized, um, and that's exhausting. So there does need to be a balance. I think typically the home is always really welcoming. So they are a home that has people round for teas and coffees and parties, and they're always showing other people love in their environment. I think that's
Hmm.
quite key actually. Um, but it means that things get that it's chaotic in a lot of situations and things get lost and have to be bought again, or mornings are really stressful because you can't find the things that they need to get out the door on time. Or meal times are really stressful and frantic because there hasn't been thought put into what am I going to do later this evening or what am I going to do tomorrow. It's can be very last minute. Um,
Mm.
so I think without even, not even intentionally doing it, they actually have this stress around them as well, this stress environment, which then aggravates everything else and makes it worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And am I right that the late diagnosis part comes because, well, A, there must be more understanding of you know what ADHD looks like in today's world, but I also believe that women in particular are good at masking their neurodiversity. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I think women in particular are very good at masking. And also there's because they have the skills that are really good at sort of mimicking and watching others and then copying. I think that it goes undiagnosed, but there's actually so many different types of ADHD that I mean, men can mask it as well, depending on
Mm,
what environment that they are in. So, but I do think probably it's more common for women to mask just because then they can fit into the norm, and that's,
yeah,
a bit better for them. I think that's what they're craving.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what does if you go into that sort of environment, what sort of tips or recommendations do you give to people to give them that structure? And I suppose my question that comes after that is there kind of a link between it being more of a physical process as well that helps it become more embedded as a
Hmm.
habit or a routine?
I think with anything, and particularly with ADHD, there has got to be like a motivation behind it. There has to be a deep reason for wanting to create that habit. Otherwise, you might start it and then fall off again. So I think for everyone, but particularly HD, having sort of mini resets, just to have somebody that holds you accountable for things makes a really big difference.
Mm,
Um, but the way that I work with anybody, ADHD or otherwise, is to do a lot of questioning around sort of stress points in the home and areas that maybe aren't working or um, just that need a little tiny bit of tweaking. So, a simple one is in the kitchen organization. I did like a kitchen organization with a woman, and I said, is there a reason the teacups are here and the kettle is there? And, just digging and seeing maybe there is a reason. And if not, can we make it easier so those things are together so that it minimizes back and forth and that opportunity to get distracted or forget what you're doing or get
mm,
interrupted, so that you
yeah,
can focus and get that task done. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So it's about making really tiny tweaks, and not necessarily making it something that the other person has to do. So by rearranging the physical space, it automatically happens without having to remember that you have to do that. And I think that's
True.
beneficial
Yeah,
for anybody. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's everybody knows when you move things in a cupboard. I guess the first week or so, you keep going back to the old cupboard, but
Yes.
you're kind of you have no choice but to get the cup out of the right cupboard in the end.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
right. So yeah, just
yeah,
little things that could in the long run make a bigger difference to their everyday life.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
how do those sort of tips come across in sort of more areas of work or organizing their time, those sorts of things?
I think there's lots of tools out there now that, like body doubling and timers, that people are more aware of, but maybe haven't experimented with yet. So I do like to use the term experimenting when I'm working with anybody because it isn't a one size fits everything for everybody. You can give tips and they need to try it to see if it works, or even just finding a timer that suits them. But yeah, little things like that. Timers work really well.
Yeah.
Um, I mentioned before, accountability is a really big one. I have a client who I have worked with for a really long time, and I text her pretty much every week just to say, "How are you getting on?" Um, and she feels that that really helps her, even though I'm not coming in to see her necessarily. Just knowing that I'm going to be checking in gets her
Yeah.
moving and gets stuff done. So
Yeah.
and that I mean, that doesn't work for everybody. Accountability works for lots of people, but not everyone. So it depends on
No,
the
definitely.
person. Yeah. I mean, I know some people that if you tell them they have to do something, it's almost the opposite reaction. They would rebel against that and not do it on purpose. So you've got to find what works for each individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you referred to something called body doubling. I don't know what that is.
So I think it's relatively new. It's kind of like So when you it's like a Zoom room or something online normally, actually essentially I do that in person a lot with people. I'm a body double when I'm in a house with a person because having somebody else there, knowing that that's what you're meant to be doing keeps you on task. And again, it's that accountability thing. But you can sign up to Zoom rooms and just you don't even have to have your camera on or sound, but just knowing that at the end of the session, people will be checking in to see how you got on, manages to keep you focused.
I see. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like having the little person sat on your shoulder. No, no, you were supposed to be doing making the dinner and chopping the carrots, and now you've gone and made a cup of tea. That sort of
Yeah.
got you. Yeah, because some people find that yes, useful if they've got like a deadline to meet or something, but they're finding it hard to keep focused on things that
Yeah.
just being in that same. I didn't realize that was what it's called. You
Yeah.
learn something new every day. How fascinating.
I think as well, it gives you the opportunity when you are stuck to have a conversation or see if anybody has a tip or advice, which when you're working on your own, you don't have that luxury.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And what have the biggest challenges been for you setting up your business in this area?
I think, initially, it was my own challenge in confidence. I think when you go through a really big transition, so when I came out of teaching, it was a bit like a grieving process. It was like I was leaving who I was and becoming somebody else and having to discover who that person was. And so I think my confidence held me back for a long, long time
Mm,
um, in being more visible. And actually, once I got over that, it's made a really big difference in my business. And I feel, like I feel able to go out and talk about what I do day to day. Yeah.
yeah,
I think as well, there's a couple of things. It's quite a new thing. A lot of people say, "Ooh, a professional organizer. I don't even know what that is. Have never heard of it before." That is slowly becoming, that is slowly becoming more of a well-known thing, especially with shows on television like Sort Out Your Life, and I know Nick Knowles did something similar, so people are becoming more aware of it. Um, and also, it's quite a personal thing. So I think more than other professions, people really need to get to know you, get to hear your voice and
mm,
trust you on a personal level before they will invite you into their home
yeah,
because there's such fear around being judged, that
yeah.
I think that's quite a big barrier.
And your home is like your sort of sacred, safe place, isn't it? So to invite somebody in is you've really got to be ready to trust that person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And what did, just for anyone sort of out there who's in the process of making a career change and wants to do quite a big change like you've done, and I think confidence is a big issue for lots of women. What was it, do you think, that sort of gave you the confidence in the end?
It was actually just doing the things that I was scared of doing, and whether and getting and not doing it perfectly and being okay with that. Because that held me back for a long time, is that, having to get everything, all the ducks lined up. And actually just taking one messy step at a time is okay. It's still moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you on that one. I think one of the example that came to mind for me was, for example, on your computer, when you have a filing system and you think, oh no, this one isn't working, I need to set up a new system so that I can find my files easier, and you don't do it because you know that you've got folders and folders and folders of files to put into the new system. And when I realized that you don't have, that I could just say, okay, I don't need to do that for all of the past, I can just have this as a system from now. I was like, oh wow, yeah, wow, I can do that now. And it just sounds completely stupid saying it, but wow, what a difference that makes. Because at a certain point in time, does it matter when you look back if the filing system changed? It's like, but now I have one that works better.
Yeah. I think we often find, actually, when we file things away, a lot of that stuff we eventually don't need anymore anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's funny you should say that, because I've been talking about sort of managing holiday photos in my Facebook group, and like in my Instagram posts and things, and I was thinking exactly the same thing. Oh my goodness, I have so many photos to sort out. But yeah, just coming to the realization that actually, yes, I do, but I don't have to start with those ones. I could actually
No,
just, whatever I want to put in place, I can start now. And going
yeah,
forward, things will be better. And whether I
exactly.
get to that or not, who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no, exactly.
yeah.
What do you think, what are the most common things that people hold on to and or struggle to let go of physically?
Ooh, it's different things for different people. I think children's items are quite a big one, and because there's so many memories attached to childhood items of our children, more particularly, and books. Books have lots of meaning for lots of people. Clothing. Clothing is a really big one. Clothing is so attached to our identity, I think,
Mm,
that it can be really difficult to declutter clothing. Yeah.
yeah.
So those are just a few. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years after I had my youngest daughter having a wardrobe declutter session with a stylist. Um, I was so shocked at the pile of clothes on the floor at the end of the session. It felt so cathartic as an exercise, but I hadn't realised, well, that there were items in there that over 10 years old that I just hadn't worn. And then you look at them, it's like, I'm never going to wear that again. Why am I holding on to it?
Yeah.
But what a sense of release and excitement, actually, and lightness, when you can then go into your wardrobe and you know that you love everything that's in there.
Yeah.
Such a great feeling.
Yeah. And I think I mean, that is really key around, well, for me particularly, having gone through lots of stages of life, having clothing that I just didn't fit into anymore. And it can take a really long time to let that go and just accept the stage of life that
Mm,
you're in. And, it's not about, we are not meant to fit into clothing. Clothing is meant to fit us. And so
for
if
sure,
you see it that way, then, we don't need to squeeze back into those things that we want,
yeah.
we think we need to, and just, yeah, accepting where we're at now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
And do
hard
you know, it is really hard.
one.
Do you underneath, like, for example, take the thing of clothing, do you see common limiting beliefs?
Yes, definitely. I think there is sometimes around moms or someone that has retired, there is this, if they have work clothes in their wardrobes, they feel like letting that stuff go. Almost they see it as it as a failure in a sense because they've moved on to something else, but not necessarily seeing it as just stepping into the next stage of their journey, but
Mm,
actually that perhaps ended in a way that didn't have closure. Um, yeah. So I think that there's a bit of a belief that that clothing represents more than just what it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
And how long's like the typical journey with a client? Because you mentioned earlier that you have a client that you've been working with for a
Mm.
while. As it's something that where you build up trust, a deep level of trust with your
Mm.
clients, does that mean that your working relationships are quite lengthy?
Yes, it can be. I mean, with some clients, it's relatively short. If they're say moving or something, it can be quite quick. Um, but yeah, for people that really need support regularly, um, I think there are more people like that reaching out now,
Mm,
accepting that it's okay, that they might just need to have somebody come in and sort of do little resets every once in a while to keep them on track.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think some of my clients, I mean, I've worked with some of my clients for over a year, maybe more.
yeah.
So, yeah, yeah. It depends on the client.
Which is good because we are all individual anyway, so that's
Mm,
important, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm assuming like you said that ideally you work face to face with people. Is it possible to work online, or is it just not the same? Or again,
Yeah.
does it depend on the situation and the client?
You can work online. That's absolutely possible. And in some circumstances, that might be the only way, distance wise or whatever. So it is possible to do it online. It would be no different. The questioning and things that would go on.
Mm,
Um, it holds a lot of the same thing. So you would have a lot of the same accountability and someone to bounce questions off of. I think sometimes, like we were talking about energy earlier, and I think that you can sometimes get that through a screen, but it's much more
mm,
profound in person. And to feel that positive energy coming from somebody else whilst you're going through something that's potentially quite challenging, um, I do think has an advantage being in person.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So how do what sort of frequency do people work with you initially, or again, is that completely
It's yeah,
individual?
it is, and a lot of it comes down to time. A lot of people, I mean, it does take time to work one to one with somebody, so they need to be able to invest that time. Um, and normally people that are coming to you are so busy and overwhelmed that, ironically, it's hard to fit it in. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think for my regular clients, it's usually about once a month that I would be supporting. But if it's something, if we're working towards a goal of some kind, then it might be once a week.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course, the other part that we haven't spoken about, which would be interesting from a selfish perspective to look at, is the eco, environmental, sustainable side of it. I'm assuming that the two go pretty well in hand anyway.
Mm.
Can you share a little bit more about if people are letting go of items, where they end up, and what you find the most efficient ways of recycling?
Yeah, so I'm quite passionate about this. I have done lots of research locally of where things go. So I do get quite a lot of family and friends messaging me to say, I've got this, where should I take it? um, I think Facebook is actually a wonderful platform because if you're part of a local community, if you post in there, you've got something that you'd like to, repurpose or send on to somewhere else. People are really good about saying where they've, you know, taken things because the reality is it takes a bigger amount of effort to recycle something or to take it to a place that's definitely going to use it again than if you just drop something off at a charity shop. So there is a time investment and it depends, I think for it's an individual thing. Obviously, I'm passionate about it and with a lot of clients I work with, I take things away so that I take them to places that will recycle them or will definitely use them. Um, because I know that they don't have time for that. And
Yeah.
they like that service as part of what I do. Um, but yeah, I think Facebook is a great place to put things. And
Mm,
if things are for free, there's a pretty good chance someone will come and get and use it
yeah.
again for something, which really helps in the process. It helps you to let go of things. If you know something is going to be used again and someone else is going to appreciate that item, it makes it so much easier to let go of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's yeah, we need there's more of it that we could be doing. It's heartbreaking to see some of the things that just get discarded when
Mm.
there's still plenty of um, life left in them. I know I do loads of posts. I say loads of posts about all the things I do with upcycled jeans and rag rugging and all these sorts of things. I love reusing some of these
Yeah.
articles to
Mm,
make them into something else that tells another story.
mm.
So
My
no, that's really
great-grandmother
special.
my great-grandmother was a rag she was a rag rugger. She was no like, famous in her area for the rugs that she made, and
Wow.
she sold them, um, and I've always had this idea that it would be such a wonderful project to start, but not for me to actually do. To so for me to oversee it, but not necessarily be part of the the creative side of it. Yeah.
It's it's really great. Have you tried rag rugging before?
I haven't actually, which is
No.
crazy because I've actually seen her. I saw her make them, and I have things that she's made, that I've kept as
Wow.
keepsakes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really pretty actually, and really
Yeah.
creative. I mean, I do think there's something around, you know, particularly around bereavement and using items like that to create something that maybe would go in your home to be
Yeah.
yeah, to keep that memory alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes.
Well, I'd be very happy to give you a demo on how to rag rug at some point because it's even something you can do in front of the TV, which is quite cool. It doesn't
Mm,
it's can be quite yeah, portable-ish depending
yes.
on the size of the thing you're making. Cushions are a good thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so big.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
amazing.
Oh.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
just to wrap up,
Yeah.
if people wanted to get in touch with you and find out more about what you do, what's the best place for them to reach you?
So I've got my website is yourprofessionalorganizer.co.uk. On Instagram, I'm your underscore professional underscore organizer. So it's very similar. I also have a Facebook group, Declutter Your Home UK, with lots of conversations and support going on there to help people to declutter their
Amazing.
homes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I think it's an absolutely fascinating business that
Mm.
you've developed yourself, and I can see that there's a really great need for your sort of services for people. So, and the way that it ties in with sustainability is, I really love that as well. So, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a complete honour to have you
Yeah. Thank you so
come
much
and
for
talk
having
to
me.
me.
Yes,
My
thank you.
pleasure.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.